there, warm welcome. You're watching Blueprint Explosive Exclusive and I'm Meghna Deka. Well, today viewers, we are going to be talking about the Trump-Epstein shame storm. Why? Because many of the alleged victims of sex offenders of allegedly Jeffrey Epstein were forced to come onto the Capitol Hill on the streets of Washington with placards which said shame. It spelled out shame. Why? Because we've seen how the temperature has been rising in Washington. It is literally coming to a boiling point because Donald Trump seems to be losing his cool after there have been calls coming in to make the Epstein Files public. But Donald Trump, however, disagrees. A democratic hoax that never ends. That's what Donald Trump yelled as the survivors of Epstein's abusers, lawmakers, as well as a storm of accusations marched towards the US Capitol Hill. In fact, Trump has called the allegations irrelevant. He has termed it as a distraction from his so-called successes, but the reality is that the calls for justice, which are being labeled as noise by the president, are simply getting louder and louder. There are protests, there are petitions, and it's getting harder for even the US president to ignore them anymore. Well, Donald Trump may say that he has absolutely no connection to Epstein, but the fact is that history has a different story to tell. The victims have a different story to tell. Well, since 1992, it is believed that the two of them have been friends, that they have known each other. In fact, we are also getting you footage which has been released by American media houses where allegedly there were cheerleaders and Jeffrey and Trump who were partying at Mar-a-Lago. This as per the US media, that there was a party which had happened from 1992 where there were several NFL cheerleaders who were involved, and the two of them were seen allegedly partying at Mar-a-Lago, which of course, as we all know, is Trump's golfing estate. In 1992, the same year, Epstein allegedly was at Trump's calendar girl competition. And this is very interesting because there were allegedly no other guests who were invited by Donald Trump except for Jeffrey Epstein at the calendar girl competition. And apparently there were 24 odd girls who were part of this. This is what the New York Times had reported. Also, we are picking up that as per the court transcripts which are coming out in the court, there are also submissions which have been made about flight logs and data that in the 1990s, well, allegedly the two of these men whom you can see here together in the earlier age were very close. And in 1990s, allegedly, Trump flew in Epstein's private jet as many as 7 times. Now, this, of course, is an allegation that Trump has very clearly denounced. He has rejected it, saying that he has never been on Jeffrey Epstein's jet ever, is what he has said. But there are flight logs which have been submitted in court to this effect. Well, what we are also picking up is that in 1993, Trump had allegedly groped a swimsuit model. Now, what is the Epstein link to this? Well, as per the allegation which is there, that it was Jeffrey Epstein himself who had introduced Trump to this swimsuit model, and this had all happened at the Trump Towers, is the allegations. This happened in New York, Trump Towers. Let me tell you what her story was to put all of this into context. Well, this young lady used to work at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club, and allegedly this is where she was approached by Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell, as I was telling you, is the daughter of a British media tycoon. She was one of the those who used to grace the parties which were happening in New York, one of the biggest socialites in that circle. And she was the girlfriend, the live-in girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein. She's also one of the co-accused, and she faces charges of trafficking. She, of course, has now said that she is ready to come clean, but she wants a full pardon. But Ghislaine Maxwell has been named by none other than this young lady, Virginia Giuffre, who says that she was approached and recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell herself. In fact, she is one of the main accusers. She was allegedly recruited into sex trafficking at the age of 17 when she was minor. However, she has died. This young girl who allegedly was trafficked at the age of 17. She died by suicide in early 2025. This is the end of Virginia Giuffre. However, her book really reveals it all. Presidents, princes, billionaires, and Hollywood icons, all of them feature allegedly in the Epstein files as per the victims, and they claim that these are the names which are now being quietly covered up. Donald Trump, of course, has denied it all, but let's tell you what, as per reports and as per allegations which have been made by these victims, who all feature in the Epstein files. We don't know what their roles are. That is going to be a separate part. But these are the names which are allegedly there, and these are the names as per the victims which they are trying to cover up. One, of course, is Donald Trump. But there are two presidents who feature in this list. Other than Donald Trump, there's also Bill Clinton, who allegedly is part of the Epstein file, that there is a list. There is Hillary Clinton, who is allegedly also clone to Jeffrey Epstein, as well as Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. Apparently, all of them have been known to have very close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. But here's the interesting part. Prince Andrew, he is, of course, part of the British royal family. He too features, as per many of the victims, in this several of the parties which were being thrown by Jeffrey Epstein. There is Stephen Hawking, who was a physicist, Michael Jackson, a musician, as well as Leonardo DiCaprio, are all parts, as per these reports, are all part of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Most of these names are not even coming out. Bruce Willis, Cameron Diaz, an actor. So this is the kind of dirt which is now being kicked up. But how many of this is true, and what were their exact links to Jeffrey Epstein, and is Jeffrey Epstein linked all the way to the current and sitting US president? That's the question. Because the victims today say that if there is nothing there to hide, then why not make the entire Epstein files public? The Republicans on their part, which is of course Donald Trump's party, they are coming out and saying that the reason why we do not want these files to become public is so that the victims are protected. But how long can President Donald Trump, these victims are, keep pretending that the Epstein files simply don't matter, that it is merely deflection? Survivors of his abuse are now coming out. They are preparing their own list of people. We've been getting you some of those who they say have definitely colluded with Epstein to commit horrendous crimes as per them. Let's get you this quick report.
September 3, 2025, Washington, D.C. This was a moment of reckoning for the Trump administration and American politics. Survivors of the crimes of the now dead and convicted pedophile and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein held an emotional press conference.
Survivor Training Fellowship.
They demanded transparency in the investigation and called on the US Congress to vote on releasing all the files. This after the House Oversight Committee had released around 30,000 pages from the investigation so far. But critics believe 97% of this was already out in the public domain and have sought the release of all information so that there is a sense of justice for the victims.
Why our government covered up for someone rich and powerful.
Several politicians stood in solidarity with the victims, and among them were Democrat Ro Khanna and Republican Thomas Massie, both from the House of Representatives. Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene, a supporter of Trump, also backed the demand.
On behalf of these women, but also as a strong message to every innocent child, teenager, woman, and man that is being held captive in abuse. This should never happen in America, and it should never be a political issue that divides us.
It's important for their own closure. They don't know their own abuse. They want to understand what's in these files for themselves. And third, we heard that there are many others who obviously were involved, and they want to know, and the American people deserve to know what was there in those files. I actually think they're helping us come together as a country.
If Ghislaine Maxwell were pardoned, it would undermine all the sacrifices I made to testify and make mockery of mine and all survivors' suffering. That is why the Epstein Files Transparency Act is so essential. It requires the Department of Justice release all the records related to Epstein and Maxwell investigations, flight logs, immunity deals, internal communications, and even the records surrounding Epstein's detention and death. And crucially, it forbids withholding documents simply because of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity. This is about ending secrecy wherever abuse of power takes root.
I was a 16-year-old high school student athlete who made good grades and had high aspirations for college when I was recruited and asked by a classmate of mine alongside with a 20-year-old male if I wanted to give an old rich guy a massage. But what high school girl would not want to do that? That day changed my life forever. And when I got into the massage room, Jeffrey Epstein undressed and asked me to do things to him. My eyes welled up with tears, and I have never been more scared in my life. When it was over, he paid me $200 and requested in exchange that I bring a girl each time to make another $200. I told him I did not want to do that, and then he gave me an ultimatum. Either you come here and massage me when I call you, or you bring me friends of yours to massage, and I will give you $200 per girl for each time she comes. I felt and hoped to never hear from him again, but he called me every day. He was so wealthy and powerful, and he would not let me go. I felt I had no choice. If I disobeyed him, I knew something bad would happen. So knowing I did not want to be sexually abused, I started to bring him other girls from my high school, and he paid me $200 for bringing them.
I was only 14 years old when I met Jeffrey. It was the summer of high school. I was working 3 jobs to try to support my mom and my sister when a friend of mine in the neighborhood told me that I could make $300 to give an older guy a massage. It went from a dream job to the worst nightmare. Jeffrey assistant Leslie Groff would call me and tell me that I needed to be at the house so often that I ended up dropping out of high school before 9th grade. And I never went back. From 14 to 17 years old, I went and worked for Jeffrey instead of receiving an education.
Brave survivors who have entrusted us with the privilege of speaking today on behalf of Virginia. Robert Giuffre, as her family. This is about justice against the rich and powerful who have stolen something from these women and many children at the time, their freedom. The freedom to live their life without mental and physical scars that have been inflicted upon them by those who thought they were untouchable. The same freedom that these monsters took from these survivors, they should never be afforded. They should never be allowed to continue their lives with impunity.
We are not asking for pity. We are here demanding accountability, and I'm demanding justice. Congress must choose. Will you continue to protect predators, or will you finally protect survivors? And also, I would like to announce here today, us Epstein survivors have been discussing creating our own list. We know the names. Many of us were abused by them. Now, together as survivors, we will confidentially compile the names we all know who were regularly in the Epstein world. And it will be done by survivors and for survivors. No one else is involved. Stay tuned for more details.
President Donald Trump, however, said that this demand was a distraction from his successes and a democratic hoax that never ends.
Survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill. They're calling for these case files, these documents to be released. Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir?
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave him everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. From what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given, but it's really a Democrat hoax.
Now that the survivors have said that they are preparing their own list, the last word on this matter has not been said. Who will be on that list? Politicians, celebrities, those who wielded considerable influence to get away. One wonders that more the Trump administration seeks to sidestep the outrage over the Epstein files, the more they'll end up conveying the impression that they have something to hide. Bureau Report, Times Now.
For decades, survivors have been suffocated by speculation. We've been mocked, we've been doubted, we've been re-traumatized.
It's a crime. It's a crime of human trafficking. This is not a political issue. It's not a partisan issue. And I think that disconnect is what we're really losing.
It's a scary thing to name names, but I will tell you, I'm not afraid to name names. And so if they want to give me a list, I will walk in that Capitol on the House floor and I'll say every damn name that abused these women.
In a tragic yet brave coming together of women, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and others spoke up and spoke about what they had gone through more than 20 years back. Some were 14, some were 12, some appeared as young as 11 that time. The victims of the Epstein horror have blamed the accused, which also includes American President Donald Trump, for trafficking and sexually abusing young women and girls.
Mr. President Donald J. Trump, I am a registered Republican, not that that matters because this is not political. However, I cordially invite you to the Capitol to meet me in person so you can understand this is not a hoax. We are real human beings. This is real trauma. Being gutted from the inside out, not that I would know what that feels like, but I imagine it's the anxiety buildup with the depression and the survival mode, and then your nervous system goes limp and ironically is shot. And it feels like you just want to explode inside because nobody, again, is understanding that this is a real situation. These women are real. We're here in person. To say that it's a hoax is just not... Please humanize us. I would like Donald J. Trump and every person in America and around the world to humanize us, to see us for who we are and to hear us for what we have to say. There is no hoax. The abuse was real. Now, what goes on behind closed doors, I can't speak for that. What happens around the world politically, I cannot speak for that. But I am here with all of these women, including our attorneys, and I would be more than happy to meet with him, and I will meet him halfway.
Epstein's planes, helicopters, boat and automobiles reportedly transported victims to his private islands in the Caribbean, where he and others, including Trump, allegedly raped them and held them captive. Jane, 14 years old when she first met Epstein, the first victim to come out, her real name still hidden, said that she had repeated sexual contact with Jeffrey Epstein when she was 14. She met the accused, Ghislaine Maxwell, while eating ice cream with her friends at a summer arts camp in Michigan. Jane had just suffered the loss of her father, and the family was struggling financially. That was when Maxwell introduced Jane that summer to Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy financier. From that day, 2 decades ago, Jane's life would turn into a nightmare that would last for years.
We were horrified to learn that she had been transferred to a prison camp. She is someone who was found guilty by a jury of sex trafficking. She not only, we often hear that she procured women for Jeffrey, which I think is a very sort of polite and minimizing term. She also participated in the abuse. She was a major architect of the scheme. And the fact that she has painted herself as a victim, I think is disgusting. And it was horrifying, I think, to us that we were not told about her prison transfer. We found out about it in the news.
Epstein promised to help Jane and her mother. He paid for her voice lessons and later sent her to a prestigious performing arts school in New York as well. "I can make things happen. You just have to be ready for it," he told her, and then dropped his pants and pulled her closer. Wiping her tears, Jane shared how she was frozen in fear.
To any survivors out there who feel like they don't matter, it doesn't matter if you went once or countless times. We were groomed. We were manipulated.
During the trial, Jane said that Maxwell was present in the room when there was sexual contact. The gory details will give you goosebumps. Jane went on to say during her hearing that Epstein and Maxwell were partners in crime, and that he asked her to be the mentor of the young girl she was sending to Jeffrey and others. She instructed the young victims on how to give Epstein sexual massages and sometimes physically participated in these encounters too. From then on, Maxwell and other Epstein assistants would help arrange Jane's transportation to his Palm Beach home every 10 days. And later, Jane made trips on Epstein's private plane to his other homes in New York and New Mexico. Years later, Jane finally told her school counselor about this abuse, but never the authorities. When asked why she waited 20 years to talk about it, Jane explained that she did not want to relive the trauma that she had experienced and feared that it would become public. She did not talk to the FBI until 2019, when Epstein was arrested. Jeffrey Epstein died a month later. The dead won't come back, but the living suffer. The victims of those accused in the Epstein scandal continue to retell their stories, even if it means standing up to some of the most powerful men and women across the world. Bureau Report, Times Now.